Well, welcome to the 700 Club. I'd like to make a little personal comment. You know, you've been watching me do things, and I had eye surgery. I had cataracts. I was driving and I had glasses. I couldn't even see the street sign across the block. And so suddenly I said, something's got to be done. They found I had cataracts. So I had the one on the left side taken out. Then 2 days before Thanksgiving, I had the right eye. And my vision is so incredible. I can see things I couldn't see 20 years ago.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's just incredible.
Both near and far.
And Dr. Scoper at Virginia Eye Consultants is an absolute genius. And so I want to give him my congratulations. And if you want this, it's so easy. You know, when we had the Flying Hospital, we did a lot of eye surgeries. And we did interocular lenses, and we took the lens out, but it was a rather elaborate procedure, and we took the old lens out and put the new one. But the way they do it, this Virginia Eye Consultant, they sort of emulsify the one lens, take it out, put a flexible lens in, and my vision is better than it has been in about 25 years. I mean, I cannot believe it.
And it was restored almost immediately.
Immediately, oh yeah, I mean, immediately, just boom, there it is. So.
Good for you.
Send a good doctor some business. Virginia Eye Consultant, Dr. Scoper, and I am so thrilled. Well, speaking of eyes, all eyes are on Georgia, where the stakes are high. 2 runoff elections on January the 5th will decide which party controls the United States Senate. So why are some Republicans threatening to boycott the election? And why is that the worst thing they could do? Our reporter Eric Phillips is in Atlanta right now.
President Trump will be here in Georgia Saturday, urging Republicans to elect David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. Some Trump supporters, however, are threatening to boycott the polls because they don't trust the process, based largely on the president's own claims of fraud during his bid for re-election.
There are those who are exploiting the emotions of many Trump supporters with fantastic claims, half-truths, misinformation, and frankly, they are misleading the president as well, apparently.
Despite criticism and threats, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a staunch Republican and Trump supporter, stood by the state's general election results. He is now sounding the alarm about what he says is happening prior to next month's Senate runoff between 2 Republican incumbents and 2 Democratic challengers.
That is why I'm announcing an investigation into third-party groups working to register people in other states to vote here in Georgia.
Raffensperger says some groups are sending absentee ballot applications to people who haven't lived in Georgia in 25 years. Others encouraging college students to register in Georgia, then change their residency after the election is over. That, combined with lingering theories of compromised election security and voter fraud in the general election, has led some Republicans to call for an election boycott. Ralph Reed, chairman of the Atlanta-based Faith and Freedom Coalition, says that is the exact opposite of what needs to happen.
That would be giving the other side control of the country by default, and that's checking out of the process, and that's not consistent with my understanding of Christian citizenship.
His organization is helping to recruit about 300 poll watchers and workers for the runoff.
It's the way to make sure that this election isn't stolen. The way to ensure election integrity is not to walk away from the election. It's to volunteer and apply to be a poll worker so that you're the one checking the signatures on the absentee ballots.
He and others realize voter turnout is the key to success. Still, the issue of voter confidence will have to be tackled. And according to Susie Voiles, who has been an election manager for 20 years, that's a challenge.
I'd say it's rather a mixed bag, but I'd say it's on the low side. And because I've done this for such a long time, so many people are saying, is it worth my voting? And I don't know, and I've never experienced that.
And RNC chairperson Ronna McDaniel was here in Marietta, Georgia last weekend, urging a rowdy crowd to not lose faith in the election process. She said they need to get out and vote in this upcoming runoff election, and encourage their friends and family to do the same. Pat.
Thanks, Eric. What can you tell us about the atmosphere right now in Atlanta?
Well, Pat, there's a very charged atmosphere right here, and I should say it's on both sides. Both Democrats and Republicans understand the gravity of this upcoming runoff election. So millions of dollars are being spent on both sides to get out the vote because, as Ralph Reed said to me the other day when I emailed him, or interviewed him rather, this is not an election where you're trying to persuade people. This is not an election of persuasion. Rather, it's an election of getting people to come out and vote. It's an election of participation. And whoever can get the most people to come out and participate is likely going to be victorious in this race. I can tell you, as someone who has been following political races and elections for a long time, I'm used to seeing political ads on television during election season. That's a normal situation to have happen. So imagine my surprise when even I was shocked to see the number of ads on television here in the Georgia area, political ads. Nothing but political ads and commercials between whatever may be on television at that time. This is a charged atmosphere. Everyone realizes how high the stakes are, and we'll find out what happens coming up on January 5th.
Well, Eric, are they doing anything different to avoid some of the problems in the general election?
Well, of course, you know, Georgia has been under a lot of scrutiny, Pat, ever since the general election on November 3rd. And we know that there are some safeguards in place, such as tabulating the Dominion voting machines in front of a bipartisan witness group. That'll happen the day before and the day after any elections to make sure those voting machines are tabulating properly. And also, poll workers will be verifying signatures on things like absentee ballots and not Dominion workers or Dominion voting machines. Those are just some of the ideas that have been implemented to make sure that people can have voter confidence when they come and participate in not only this upcoming runoff election on January 5th, but in elections to come. But I will tell you the other side of that, outside of what the state might be doing, outside of what Dominion Voting, the company itself might be doing, you've got these groups on both sides who are keeping a very close eye on these elections. In other words, the Republicans alone have sent 300 poll workers and poll watchers to training so that they can themselves eyeball these ballots as they come in and make sure there are no improprieties that might compromise this election as they felt happened in the past, Pat.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for that excellent report. And ladies and gentlemen, from everything I can learn, it's about as tight a deal in Georgia as they've ever had. That doesn't mean that people won't vote, but you got to get out to vote if you live in Georgia. I mean, that vote is important, and we cannot allow anything. But the Georgia Secretary of State certified the election result after hand auditing 5 million ballots, which showed that the paper ballot voting system counted and reported results accurately. The small change in the final tally was due entirely to the addition of ballots that had been uncounted due to human process errors. So from what we gather, it's going to be a clean deal, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of problems in Georgia, and tremendous amount of money is being spent and an enormous amount of partisan enthusiasm. Well, in other news, President Trump took to social media yesterday with what he says may be the, quote, most important speech I've ever made. So what did the president have to say? John Jessup has that.
That is right, Pat. In a nearly 50-minute speech, 46 minutes to be exact, it's posted on social media, the president repeated charges that the election was stolen, claiming fraud and irregularities related to mail-in voting. And he said he'll continue to contest the results because he's determined to protect America's election system.
The constitutional process must be allowed to continue. We are going to defend the honesty of the vote by ensuring that every legal ballot is counted and that no illegal ballot is counted. This is not just about honoring the votes of 74 million Americans who voted for me. It's about ensuring that Americans can have faith in this election and in all future elections.
So far, the president's legal team has not been successful in its court challenges. Well, turning to the coronavirus surge that's hitting the nation, the federal government issuing its most urgent warning to date, while also preparing for a massive vaccine rollout to begin in 2 weeks. All this amidst new concerns about frontline healthcare workers and their mental health. CBN's Heather Sells has the story.
A grim warning from the head of the Centers for Disease Control Wednesday, saying that in the next 3 months, the pandemic will get worse.
December and January and February are going to be rough times. I actually believe they're going to be the most difficult time in the public health history of this nation.
The reason earlier COVID surges were regional, this time the rates are rising in all parts of the country. Right now, the COVID Tracking Project reports more than 100,000 Americans are hospitalized with the virus, and 2,700 have died from it in just the past 24 hours.
You just sit there and hold their hand. They want you to limit 15 minutes in the room, but how do you walk away from somebody that's saying, I just want to die?
Operation Warp Speed expects emergency authorization for the first vaccine by December 15th. Pfizer plans to release 6.4 million doses that day, with 12 million from Moderna possibly available a week later. States across the country are preparing their vaccine storage facilities.
This will happen at hospital systems or facilities equipped with ultra-cold storage.
Virginia expects just 70,000 doses from Pfizer in the first wave.
We have plans in place for determining who goes first.
Governors and local leaders will ultimately decide who gets the vaccine, but the CDC says that nursing home patients and healthcare workers should be first in line. There is fresh concern about mental health for these frontline heroes. In a new survey, 8 in 10 say they're experiencing anxiety, while 3/4 report exhaustion and burnout.
Once worry transforms to anxiety or depression, these things don't go away on their own.
Regent University professor and therapist Danny Holland works with these providers and says many do or will need counseling to go forward. For now, self-care and empathy from family members will help.
Those things really can do a lot to both kind of release some of the stress and increase resilience.
That's good news not only for healthcare workers, but their patients as well. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Pat, fatigue and burnout, just one of the reasons people are describing the season as the long, dark winter.
It really is. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know there's good news coming up, but maybe, well, it's always too late for those who suffered and died, but nevertheless, it's coming. We're going to have the vaccine very shortly, and then we'll get what Laurie calls for herd immunity. So before long, the whole country will be immune in a fashion for this terrible corona. And it's got to be brought under control, but it will happen. Unfortunately, a number of people will be dying, and all we can say is we're saddened, and we know the grief that loved ones are having, and they need counseling, we need prayer, and we need to help each other during this terrible time. But the good news is the herd immunity and the vaccines are coming, and we as a nation, under God's help, are going to beat this horrible plague.